Right, let's talk then about a team that we have talked to death on this show. But what makes it cool this year to talk about them, Team Liquid, is they actually did the changes necessary. They've actually got in really good players. And suddenly, as you said, like they won from the lower bracket EMEA, like they actually are a really good team now. They've sort of like made good on what the team always should have been able to do, right?
Yes, and they've also kind of made that change. Again, this is another team that the beginning of the season you'd look at and you'd be like, oh God, what's happening here? And they've actually kind of, as time does, they've sort of pulled themselves together and been able to get, a little bit more coordinated with things. Because I think one of the problems at the beginning of the season was just really that certain players on the team looked a little bit on different pages to each other. I remember one of the big complaints was kind of, it felt like Redgar and Nats were kind of, like Nats was always going to be great because he's Nats and he sort of has a very independent job. But Redgar would be on a page with Nats, and Nats can be on a page with everyone else, but Redgar wasn't necessarily on a page with everyone else. That seemed to be the main sort of observation regarding them. I think one of the big things that people widely sort of ascribe a lot of Team Liquid's improvement to, which I would be inclined to agree with, is just Safe. Like Safe has played really, really well. I think he was someone who, at the beginning of the season, had a number of doubters. Like, there were quite a few people who were like, is he good enough to be on the team? And I keep seeing people memeing that, or at least when the EMEA playoffs were going on, people were memeing that, and they were like, oh yeah, what was that about Safe not being good enough? Because he's just been a really exceptional player. I think he's fit the really flexible duelist role that's kind of being demanded by the meta at the moment really well. So, he's played the Jet, he's played the Raze, he's played the Neon, and he's putting up consistently good performance as a direct result on all of those agents. And I don't know if it's just that he seems to really fit the meta. There's obviously got to be at least some portion of it that's he fits the team as well. And obviously he's been on the team with Yampi and Soulcast for some time. So yeah, he's been a really, really strong player for them as well. And I think that when you've got these individually really strong players on each of their respective roles, and you give them enough time to kind of gel and kind of get on the same page as each other regarding the IGLing, then yeah, you do kind of get the results like we have now. One of my big questions though, and I suppose this will be answered when Tokyo actually happens, is did Liquid only win EMEA playoffs because Fnatic knew they didn't need to? Like, were Fnatic fighting strats?
Right. Okay.
Exactly. Like, did Fnatic feel just right? Did they win because they were actually straight up the better team, or did they win because Fnatic didn't put 100% on the gas?
By the way, just so people understand, obviously you're not in any way implying through the game. It's just essentially when you, like you say, when you know you've made it, it might be more like you experiment a bit or you just play a bit looser and you think, look, it's cool if we win, but it doesn't matter if we don't. It's not the same as if you're in the elimination match, it's champions final,
Yeah, it's kind of like you might play like your standard strategies, but not necessarily your special strategies that you would pull out and stuff like that, because that's the stuff that you want to save. So yeah, I don't know. I also think, well, okay, I don't know if this is biased from my own.
If it is, that's the whole point of being an analyst, to be biased. Just let people know the bias and lean into it. Go on.
Well, the point is because this is something where I could numerically be wrong.
Come on.
But I was going to say, I think that Yampi's playing better than he has done in the past, but I think that I have always had a more negative opinion of Yampi than the general consensus seems to be.
A lot of the people who bring on the show thought he was a good player, so...
I've never thought he's a bad player, but I always thought that he was kind of misplaced in the team.
Right.
And, I especially found it very strange when he was IGLing as a Jet and stuff like that. And he was mechanically a great Jet, but I always felt like the sort of kind of Jet that he was playing was never quite in line with the kind of Jet everyone else was playing. Like in the world where CNED was the world leading Jet and he was this insane, he would just dash in, be this incredible, initiation onto a site and get what he needs to. Yampi wouldn't necessarily always be that. So I always kind of had criticisms about him because of that, but it wasn't because I thought he was unskilled. However, he's kind of shifted where he's at. He's been playing Killjoy again, which was something that I remember him playing way back when, and then he kind of like went to the Jet, and I remember people were a little bit undecided as to whether or not they even liked him on the Killjoy. And I'm talking like mid 2021 at this point. But he's been playing some of that. He's been playing some Sky, which is a very, very meta pick at the moment, which is also like interesting to me because actually that always used to be Soulcast's agent.
Right.
Soulcast was always quite good at Sky, I think. But again, just because of sort of like role shifts and meta shifts and stuff.
I like the way they've still got that element of Team Liquid where people just swap like what they play and what
and
still exists, I guess. Okay.
I think we are in an era where that's kind of more
right.
palatable.
Right.
Whereas kind of like back in 2021, you sort of needed the more steadfast roles, I think.
Yes.
But for example, like there's so many initiators in the game that it's actually okay for both Yampy and Soulcast to play, to kind of cover the initiator role between the two of them. And then like if Soulcast needs to play Viper or if Yampy needs to play Killjoy, for example, like I said, you can kind of do that. So they sort of have they're sort of fingers in all the pies, I guess, which, and they can spread that skill out. And I think that's really good, especially if you've got a strong voice coming from Redgar, which is something that I always thought Team Liquid lacked. Like, in the same way that maybe not quite the same, but in a similar vein to how it irritated me with Sentinels, like, I always felt like Team Liquid needed a stronger voice, because it was, at one point it was Yampy, at one point it was fucking Scream. Like, so, I think, like, having that strong central voice, you have like a really good anchor from Nats who can kind of do that he needs to, and then Yampy, Soulcast, and Safe are all playing things that they can be flexible on, they can pop off on, and they can be fluid with who is playing what. I think that's a really good kind of environment compared to the things that led me to criticize Team Liquid in the past.
Funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content. Well, subscribe to this channel then, or be a pleb and don't.